to the RunnerX podcast, where we talk about all things running. As many runners know, it's 90% mental. So join Coach Valerie and Coach Caroline as we go through the mental side of running. Back to the RunnerX podcast. We are doing a batch today. Gosh, I can't believe it. I think it's 75 degrees outside, which is unbelievable for August 2nd. So I was like, quick, let's go and record some podcasts. But of course, I don't know what they're building over there. Are they building like a new PlayStation or something? Who knows? Maybe it might even be a new, what am I thinking?
They're probably just redoing the parking lot.
Oh, you think?
No, I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard to tell. It's hard to tell. It's just a beautiful park right out here by the high school. So we were talking earlier, Valerie, about advice you were given when you started doing triathlons about swimming. And let's talk about that. What was the advice you were given?
Well, this was a really eye-opening thing. At my first triathlon, we took a swim lesson, and the coach said, it was really smart. I mean, he said almost everyone that's already a swimmer, by the time they're an adult, they've had years of, he called it staring at the line.
Yeah.
Right? Being in the pool, adapting to the water. I mean, the countless hours they've spent training, swim meets, you name it. Well, he said, most of you guys are here and your triathlon's probably in a month.
Yeah.
You're not going to get that ability to go back in time and spend 10 to 15 years staring at the line. So as an adult, when you learn a movement, you basically first have to learn what is the movement.
Right.
Because obviously we're going to learn first from our mind, and then we're going to tell our body. So it's a mind-body thing. So first, what is swimming? And then usually, like what this guy did, is he showed us, again, drills on to help you learn the technique of swimming.
Right.
So that maybe you're not going to be great at it, but you're going to be good enough to understand the movement and, of course, get through the swim. And then if you have the ability to work on the movement, then you will always continue to improve on that movement.
Right.
So today I can still swim, and of course I do post method of swimming, in case you're wondering. Post method of swimming and cycling. But when you start to learn how to do the movement, well, then the movement even gets to be more enjoyable.
Right.
I'm not kidding. I played in a pool when I was a kid. I'd never swum for real.
Right.
So it was very interesting, and there was no way he was like, we want to make sure you get through your triathlon, but also he's like, I want you to enjoy the movement to actually want to get better at it.
Well, and I think that's really important because I was a swimmer in high school. I wasn't a runner. I was a swimmer. And we had to do 50 flutter kicks, right? You had to do one-arm stroke where you kept one arm out in front of you. You're just working on one arm. Then you have to flip it over and do the other side, right? We had these drills we had to do. And we had speed work, right? We had, 50s as fast as you can or 50s on the minute, right? You had to do 100s or 200s. I was a 500 meter swimmer. I was a distance swimmer and became a distance runner. So that whole mindset, I would be like, oh, I'm made for distance, right?
Right.
No, it's just where I'm comfortable and where I'm happiest, right? That's where I'm in my groove. But he never said, okay, you guys that are doing the 500s, you're just going to sit over here and do 500 three times. And the rest of you speed people, you're just going to do speed.
Right.
And the same is true for butterflyers, breaststrokers, backstrokers. I still had to do backstroke, even though I was 500 free. I still had to do my butterfly. I still had to do breaststroke, even though I had an illegal kick, right? So I still had to do all of them. I had to do all of the movements. I had to do all of the exercises, right? All of the drills to make me a better 500 free swimmer. And I want you guys to realize this. The same is true that we were talking about last week with the guys that are playing football. They're not only going to do throwing, they're not only going to do catching. Their warm-up, their drills are going to be about speed work, about cardiovascular, about making sure that they are adapting to the heat that's in the air outside. Same with golfers. It doesn't matter if I'm if my best thing to do is I'm a great putter, I'm going to still work on my drive, right? I'm going to work on my drive, I'm going to work on my putt, I'm going to work on my chips, all that stuff. But at the end of the day, we don't do that with running.
Right.
We don't take a look at it and say, what are the elements of the gait cycle, post, fall, pull? How do I make sure I get my brain into doing that, get my muscles ready to to move with elasticity, and then, okay, I'm not feeling good about this. How do I stop? And what am I missing? Am I missing my fall? Am I missing my pull? Now, are there ways when I'm running? We've talked about checking in. We talked about this, I think, last week personally, where if I'm running and I'm getting tired and I start to feel it in my quads, that means I'm not pulling, correct? If I'm feeling it in my back, though, I'm bananing, right? I'm
leaning. I mean,
leaning. Okay,
and that's a good term since it drives me nuts. I said this earlier. So one of the things, like again, when I took my very first swim class, is the guy asked us to hold what's called a streamline position, and I couldn't even do that. I mean, my elbows were so bent, like this. My streamline looked like the person at the airport.
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly what she looked like the guy in the little.
I literally had been running for a long time, doing a lot of weightlifting. I had literally never realized that I could not open my arms overhead. It was really eye-opening. And Caroline just mentioned 50s on the 60. He gave us 50s on the 60, and my 50s were like 65, 70.
Yeah. That's all.
I mean, in the beginning, it was crazy how awkward it all felt. I had to relearn how to work in the water. And I could run, right? It wasn't fitness. But that's
right.
what I want people to understand. So it's the same thing. If I'm running and something doesn't feel right, why would I keep running?
Right.
Instead, stop and reset. And the first thing is to check your pose. Like, the reason it's called pose, guys, is the position is pose.
Right.
It's just it's a pose. And when Romanoff created the word, it's because like in ballet there's 5 poses and just beautiful movements out of all these poses. And so he looked for what is the running pose. So now once you know that, if my back hurts, my first thought should be, am I holding my ears, shoulders, hips in line? Let me check and make sure I'm in line.
Right.
How's my alignment? If you want to say it like that. We say pose because that's what it is. But we practice when we're not running, right? Even when you're sitting, you should be sitting ears over shoulders over hips.
Yeah, right now I'm all scrunched.
When you're standing, when you're walking, like there's never really a time that it's not okay to be in pose. So if my lower back hurts, my first thought should be let me make sure that I'm not maybe leading from my shoulders, which people call it leaning. So you don't want to lean when you run. You want to be upright. And so that's number one. So these are check-ins. But first you have to know there is a pose.
Right.
Otherwise, how do you know?
Yeah.
You go to the doctor, you're like, my back hurts. They give you stretches for your back. You go back out and you run. You do the same thing. Guess what?
Yeah.
Your back's going to hurt again. So, and then like you said, my quads are hurting. Okay, so I'm supposed to be running with my hamstrings and not even using more than 10%. So if I'm feeling any muscles at all, something's wrong. Mm-hmm. So again, we teach you to not just the running, but how to reset inside your run. And resetting is much easier than waiting or gritting through or all that stuff.
I was just going to say that. And that's the other thing too. I've seen this a lot where, especially because it's August, right? And we're in the northern hemisphere, right? So it's hot here. So we get people saying things like, I'm struggling. It's going to be a hard run today. Well, honestly, if I woke up and said, man, it's going to be a shitty day today, I can guarantee you it's going to be a shitty day today, right? So if I wake up and say, oh, it's going to be a good day. My kids are going to be great today. Or, boy, I'm going to do great on that presentation, right? We think that we can almost action our way into our results because that's what we've been taught. We have to hustle. You have to run more miles, right? I can't express this enough, guys, how important it is to think before you do. If you think it's going to be a struggle, there you go. It's not, you're 90% there. It's going to be a struggle. If you think, wow, what a great opportunity for me to work on my heat adaptation, right? For me to deal with cold. Wow, maybe today I'll just do drills. This is a perfect day to do drills. There's something like that. Just shift your mindset. I'm progressing. Today I'm going to try to progress a little bit better than last time I ran. Or I'm going to try to do that drill with a little more elasticity. How much that can change your mindset.
And by the way, guys, we all go there. Like,
oh yeah,
I ran the other day and it was hot, and I was thinking it's hot.
Yeah.
And then I thought, why are you thinking that? Like, again, self-fulfilling. You're right. I mean, if that's going to be what you think about, then you're right. It's going to be hot. So instead, I picked a fall point. I lifted my shoulders up and I was like, I'm just going to pull. I'm just going to find a fall point I can hold and just have some fun with pulling. And honestly, at the end of my run, I wasn't that much off what I thought I was going to be. But if I had spent my whole run going, oh my gosh, it's hot, then yes, it would be hot. Now, to be fair, and I'll say this just because we're talking about it, like the Olympics are going on right now, right? And I have 2 ladies right now I'm trying to get to Boston. So that's my Olympics. So is what I tell them, and what I'm sure any athlete that's at that level, trying to get to that next level, you want to have mindset of preparation of what if.
Yeah.
Like what am I going to do if it's hot?
Yep.
What am I going to do if
the
I have
swimmer
a
with the
cramp?
goggles?
Yes. Yeah, the swimmer with the goggles, stuck them in her mouth.
Yep.
Kept swimming, and as long as she said I could still breathe, so I knew I was fine.
That's all you have to.
Or like, did y'all see Hassan? She fell during the 1500, came back up and won, and then not even 8 hours later, won the gold in the 5K.
Wow.
Right, and she said I did have some coffee, but I mean, she could have just, right? I mean, that mental strategy is part of training,
right? And
part of training is, how am I going to handle any situation?
Yeah.
And for those of us that do distance running, guys, something's going to happen.
Yeah, right? I'm going to have to use the washroom when I didn't expect to. Whatever.
Right.
And that's a great example. And kind of to go with what we were talking about last week with the swimming. That's something I kind of want to bring up to people is if you were doing a triathlon and you went to your coach, right? And okay, I'm going to do my swimming. And this feels awkward. You were talking about how it felt awkward. You didn't realize you didn't have elasticity in your shoulder. You didn't have flexibility in your shoulders, or mobility rather. You didn't get out of the pool and go, okay, that's it. I'm not going to do the swim part of it. That's it. But as runners, we'll be like, well, that's it. I'm not going to do the marathon, or I'm not going to do 5Ks because I can't. You know what I mean? It's almost like we push back and say, well, I'm not going to do the drills because they make me feel awkward. I'm not going to do the muscle work. I'm not going to do what I have to do because I shouldn't have to do that with running. But it's okay for me to have to do it with golf. It's okay for me to have to do it with my swimming or my cycling or my kids with their gymnastics. Right. Would you let your kid just go out and do a triple jump, right? You'd say, no, let's warm you up first. Let's do some reps first. Right. Let's get you going. Now let's go out with the coach and get you going. And I guess I want you guys to remember that attitude about running is just like, I'm just going to go out, I'm going to lace up, and I'm just going to go out and run 10 miles.
Well, it's funny because you talk about, like, if a lot of moms do this, they're like, oh, I got 45 minutes.
Yeah.
I'm going to drop my kid off and I'm going to run that whole 45 minutes, right? Because I want to see what I can get, because you're like, it's my time.
Uh-huh.
And I want to use my time for what I think is valuable, what I find to be quality. And running, for most of us, it's the running. So then that's part of my job as a coach too, is to help you feel like actually it's really great for your mind and body to do some drills, to do some speed work, to do some intervals, to do some curb runs.
Yeah, of that 45 minutes, you're talking about maybe 5 minutes at the beginning.
Right. So when people say to me, Valerie, I don't have time for the drills, or they look at it as like it's homework or it's whatever.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, why do you even want to run?
Yeah.
I mean, the fun of running is being better at running.
Yeah.
And part of that is the training. And so I promise you guys, if you start to make the practice sessions as part of your mental game even.
Yeah.
Like it's amazing, but just the little things you do in your practice that show up in your run really become so rewarding, and the joy just keeps coming.
Thank you for joining us on the RunRx podcast. If you'd like to know more, join us at www.runrx.fit. And if you have additional questions that you'd like answered on the podcast, email us at support@runrx.fit.